Hello, everybody. Welcome to Daf Yomi Week in Lightning Review. I'm Rachel Scheinerman, hosting from My Jewish Learning. And this morning we are joined by Rabbi Asher Lopatin, whom many of you know as well. And if you join us tomorrow for our Siyum on Tractate Kiddushin, because today is the penultimate day of the tractate. We're on Daf 81 today. Tomorrow we'll be on the last Daf, which is 82. So we are holding a Siyum at noon Eastern. That was our best attempt to make it inclusive of people on both sides of the Atlantic and on the East and West coasts of the United States and so forth. But if that time doesn't work for you, of course, we will post a recording as well. So there's Rabbi Lopatin today on this week and Rabbi Lopatin tomorrow on the Siyum to look forward to, plus other favorites from our author list. So Rabbi Lopatin, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Rachel. And Rachel, you'll tell me if for some reason the broadcast isn't working, but blink your eyes a lot so I can make sure we're working. It's such a comfort to be with everyone. These are really difficult times, and Torah gives us a lot of comfort. I'm broadcasting live from outside in Huntington Woods in Michigan near Detroit. So, and I do want to say that today's day 27 of our precious hostages having been taken, and we demand their release. Yes, as we're almost done with Kiddushin, so let's review last week from 74a from Ayin Daled. It's continuation of an earlier Mishnah a few dapim before, the whole idea that Nebuch, if you're not allowed to marry legitimate Jews or prestigious Jews, but kahal, then mutar lavo ze b'ze, you're allowed to marry each other. This is really, the whole idea of a mamzer and someone who can't marry. Rav Moshe Feinstein, the great posek in America of the 20th century, late 20th century, second half of the 20th century, really found different ways from mamzerim to get married. Crazy, even had a mamzer makes his wife a shifcha, a slave girl, marries her, then they divorce, something like that, and then the kid is, and then he frees her. She has a kid, she gets pregnant, then he frees her. That's nice. Then the kid is not a mamzer. The kid can marry anyone. Anyway, very complicated stuff. Typical Rav Moshe Feinstein in doing things that seem like disgusting and barbaric and really are very redemptive and really very positive. But in Israel, they struggle with this. I heard that in Israel, even if a woman doesn't have a get and she remarries someone and has a child with them, they say, no, this is the child from the first husband. We don't care, just because you're sleeping with another man. So really, really try to make sure people can get married. And there's a lot of work on 74a about letting people get married. What is the definition of mamzer? Then on 75a, we're already on to 75a. We're already on to Einam Aleph Mitzri Sheni. Love this. Second generation Egyptian. First generation is not allowed to marry. Second generation not allowed to. But third generation the Torah Egyptian is allowed to marry. I love Rashi. Mitzri Shlishi. Yisrael Al Yehu, a third generation Egyptian, is a Jew, is a typical Jew. But so we talk about, it's a acculturation. And actually, we'll get to it a little bit later, that we make real efforts. Again, I was talking to Rachel before that this is the primitive building blocks of our religion, making efforts to bring people in, even when the Torah says third generation, only third generation. Well, second generation has a status of Mitzri. And then we talk about the children of Ammonim and Moabim, of Ammonites and Moabites. By the way, these people, according to the Gemara, don't exist anymore anyway. But they're all everyone mixed up. There's no such thing as an Ammoni or Moabi. Folks, there's no such thing as Amalek either, unless it's declared by a prophet, and our tradition says there are no prophets these days. So when you hear people say there's a Amalek, no. But anyway, theoretically, Ammoni, we say that their children maybe are not pasul, even though Ammonim and Moabites are not supposed to ever marry with Jewish people. So again, there's this real attempt to bring people in as much as possible while keeping sort of this sense of yichus, of tradition. And Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said a widow who's sort of questionable where she's coming from can marry a Kohen. And the idea of there are different opinions about this, but about if a woman is pregnant, she says this is a legitimate baby. I had relations with a Kohen, and this is what the baby is. Ne'emenet. Not everyone says she's believed, but many opinions she's believed. Then on 75b, we get to Ein Hamabet. Woohoo! The big thing, Kutim. These Kutites, the Samaritans, could be that these really were the Samaritans, were the Israelites and even the Judeans that remained in the Holy Land when, after the first temple, most were taken, or many, seems like most, were taken to Babylon, and many went to Egypt. I had a rabbi in my shul who theorized that there's a group that stayed, that weren't, but they were the lowly people that stayed there. When Ezra and Nehemiah and Zerubbabel, that whole crowd, came back from Babylon to build the second temple, they met up with these folks that were there. And the tradition says these were not Jews. These are people that came from all different lands, but maybe they were the old Jews that had stayed there. Anyway, these Samaritans are called Gerei Arayot. We didn't like them. We didn't work together with them. So they, according to Tanakh, the Bible, these are people that came from different lands and were settled by actually Sancheiriv, the Assyrian king, to put them in the land. But Arayot, lions, Arayot, lions ate them up. And they said, what are we going to do? This crazy land that you brought us to, the lions are eating us up. So they said, we got to worship the God of this country, this land, and that way we'll be safe. And so they kind of converted, but kind of didn't. They didn't do it because they actually believed in the Torah and God and anything. They just did it for practical reasons to save themselves from the lions. So many opinions, a lot of discussion of this. Gerei Arayot Haim, Kutim, and some say Kashar Oivdei Kochavim. They're idolaters, plain idolaters. Rabbi Akiva says, Kutim Gerei Emet Haim. These Samaritans are true converts. Actually, there's a whole discussion amongst the medieval authorities, Tosfot. Maybe they had a second conversion, and the first conversion was bad, was for selfish reasons. The second conversion was they really did believe. In any case, and they both, Rabbi Akiva and his interlocutors, they use the same pasuk to prove their point. But Rabbi Akiva says they're cool, they're kosher. Then comes I love this idea, but Rabbi Akiva would say that they're kosher Jews, but they not ein bekin b'dikduke mitzvot. They don't understand all the laws of marriage, and therefore that's why their offspring is prohibited. And then they have a great point. So these are, they're not. Maybe they are good converts, they're not good converts, whatever. But interestingly, the main source is that you can eat their matzah. Matzah kuti muteret v'adam yotzei b'yadecho b'tov Pesach. Strites matzah can be made by kutim, and you can fulfill your obligation if it's made by these Samaritans, these Kutites. Rabbi Eliezer says, no. But so this whole discussion, and I love this idea, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, you know what? You might not like these Kutim, you might whatever, but every mitzvah that they've done, kol mitzvah shechziku b'kutim, they take it more serious than Jews do, than Israelites do. So therefore, the things that they do care about, maybe kashrut and maybe Shabbos, I don't know, definitely matzah. they are strict about you can trust them. You can't trust them for other things. So this reminds me, let me get into trouble here. Very, very different. Jews, we love all Jews. Everyone's great. And I got some questions about whether they follow the Torah. They sort of did, sort of didn't. I don't know. It's really not clear. We know the Samaritans are the ones, if they are the same ones that Kamara is talking about, that sacrifice the Paschal offering on Pesach, but not in the temple, not on Al-Aqsa or the Temple Mount, but they go to Har Eval, a different mountain. In any case, there were a lot of claims a few years ago, 10, 20 years ago, that Chabad, that Lubavitch Chabad, oi, they don't believe, they believe the Rebbe is this is the Messiah, is going to come back, and some pray to the Rebbe, and Mashiach and all that. And there was this sense that, are they theologically taking themselves out of what is classic Jewish theology? The point actually is everyone, you're traveling, you go to Chabad house. Your kids in college, a lot of times they go to Hillel. That's great. They go to JRC. They also, but definitely Chabad is amazing, So the point is that, are they keeping kosher? I don't care what they believe the Rebbe is or who the Rebbe is. Are they keeping bottom line? And that's sort of this sense here. Rabban Shimon Gamliel says that bottom line, I don't care. They converted. They gave again. I'm not talking about Chabad, but the Kutim, the Samaritans. I don't care. Is this matzah kosher or not? Can I eat in their restaurant? And the Jewish people, even like I'm saying, the Frum, the Haredim, the Orthodox, whatever, everyone said, like, we don't really care what Chabad thinks of the Rebbe. We care about, are they going to serve me my kosher food when I go to Bologna, Italy, or when I go to Florence, or when I go to China, or wherever. So it's a really interesting idea of what is important. So we get to, then we get to this idea of like, if you come from a chashuva family, we don't, like an important family, don't check like let's say you're the parents or the grandparents or the presidents of the shul. We talk about if they min hamizbeach ulamala, if they were priests and they offered sacrifice from the mizbeach, then you don't have to ask them about, is it a reliable family to marry? Likewise, I think if the dad or the mom sat on the bima, maybe that's a reliable family. So, and then we kind of get what do men fight about, what do women fight about, what kind of relationships. Anyway, 76b, we get to already 76b, and this is a big issue. So tasim alecha melech, the Torah says in Deuteronomy, you shall surely place a king upon yourselves. And the Gemara there, and the way we pass is kol mesimot shatam isim lo yu ela mikar v'checha. You gotta place. They have to be Jewish, not just Jewish, but they can't be, in the Gemara's eyes, if they're a convert, they're not part of a Jewish lineage. They have to have Jewish lineage. There's a discussion that even if now Rav Ada bar Ahava says that even if the person's born Jewish, his mother converted, or his mother was Jewish, the father wasn't Jewish, they're not qualified to be the king or whatever. We paskin no, as long as your mother Jewish. So, but the key thing, this does come up, actually, believe it or not, in whether the shul president can be a convert, and it's crazy. And therefore, and more often, it came up with the Young Israel, National Council of Young Israel, whether a woman can be the president of the shul. And they actually banned it because they said it has to be a king, a male. Melech velo malka. That's what Maimonides says about this. And they also said a convert can't be the president of the shul. Sounds crazy. So I might have said this before. When I took my shul in Chicago 28 years ago, we had a wonderful woman president, Julie Aronson, who, by the way, now made Aliyah. She's the president of her her building in Israel. Anyway, so she so she was the president. I asked Rav Aaron Soloveitchik at Salvat, can a woman be president? He said, of course. He said, really, this is talking about if there's nepotism. If it's nepotism, give it to a man. If it's based on a meritocracy, then you have to give it to the one who's most qualified, a convert or a woman or a this or that, most qualified. Anyway, that was his psak. I don't know what Young Israel, National Council of Young Israel still has an issue. But the Gemara struggles with this because on the sort of toward the bottom of 76b, it says, well, you had all this Delakamoni, Uriachiti, you have all these leaders within the kingdom of David who are, let's say, Ammonite, Hittite, they seem like they're not Jewish or they're converts or something. And the Gemara tries to weasel out of that and say, no, they just lived there, lived in Ammon, he lived in, but the clearest thing is in Pirkei Avot, it talks about Shmaya and Avtalion, who were converts, who was they were the head of the Sanhedrin, they were the leaders in that period, the Second Temple period, and that's because they were the most qualified. So we definitely have proof of this. But it's in our tradition, unfortunately, this idea of looking down, and therefore, but it's in our tradition also that you have to accept the convert and welcome them, and they should be an integral part of the people. And that's the test of whether we're a decent people, how our attitude towards the convert and towards the foreigner. I would extend it even towards the foreigner, or even the Ger Toshav, the person who is part of our people, let's say living in the Jewish state of Israel, but are not Jewish. It's a test of our people. And the Torah says this, are you going to be the nation that welcomes them and cares for them and integrates them or not? So anyway, that's very important. 77b, Ein Zayin, Amud Bet. Some interesting thing. Amud Aleph. The Kohanim honestly do, if they're, traditional and strict, they do ask about the parents and the grandparents of the woman they're marrying. So I love this idea that it mentions on 77a, not so connected, but believe it or not, if the Torah talks about this, if a man divorces a woman and she remarries another man, then she divorces that man or something, the first husband cannot remarry her. We have a lot of cases where people break up, they separate, they get divorced, and then they get remarried, and that's totally fine, but not if there's someone in the middle, according to the Torah. So, and it's called a to'eva. Oh, terrible! It's a taboo to do that. But the Gemara the rabbis are so powerful. They say, okay, so it's a to'eva for here. The aim, he to'eva, yucky, not good what she does. The ain baneha te'uvim, but her children, that's not a problem. When the man remarries his first wife, who married in between, and takes her back, and they can get remarried again, the offspring that they have are not mamzerim. They're good kids, whatever. So I love this idea. Like, let's not get scared when the Torah says to'eva. It's a flag. We have to look into it. About also cheating. It calls it a to'eva when you cheat. Something to think about and discuss, but it's not something that should just make us run away and not have a conversation. So anyway, 77b, this whole thing, about how many averos, how many sins is it when you do, let's say a Kohen Gadol, continues to 78a, a Kohen Gadol, a high priest has relations with a widow, and that's two. It gets two sets of malkot. The Gemara loves this stuff, and many masechtot talk about how many sins is it for this, how many sins you get through that, and all that stuff. But we get to the issue on 78a of a woman who converts less than 3 years old, and there's a real interesting discussion. And then towards the 78a, Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah says a convert who married a this is an interesting case. It comes up. Two converts get married. Their offspring, Rabbi Yossi says, can marry a Kohen. The rabbis say, well, not so fast. There are issues. And then I love this thing. This is a classic thing. If the guy asks, can I marry this woman? She's a daughter of converts. Then we'll say no. But if he already marries her, then it's okay. Then I'm good for you. Mazel tov, mazel tov. So that's really a case of we want to make things work. The Gemara wants to make things work and wants to be generous and keep that tradition in the Torah that welcomes the outsider, that welcomes the convert. So in the end of the day, Rabbi Yossi prevails. But this is a great case of, if you ask the rabbi, it's treif. You always say, don't ask the rabbi whether this chicken is kosher or not, because they're going to say it's treif. So there's something to that joke because, minimally funny, but it's true that sometimes you don't ask the question and just do it, and then you're totally fine. On 78b, we also talk about this thing about who do we believe, who says the mamzer, and anyway, but finally we get back to our classic kiddushin. Oh my gosh, we're out of this whole thing of who can marry whom. We're back to someone says a messenger and they're not sure who's getting married, and the messenger gets confusion in the marriage. We had that earlier and we have that again, and that's classic kiddushin. And we also get to the idea of retroactive, but if something happens, we discover things retroactively. It applies across the line with ties, all sorts of things. But I want to get to the Mishnah on 79b, because that's really kind of interesting stuff. The whole idea of Medinat Hayam, of going overseas and losing contact. And in general, we're like right now, we're Zooming, and unfortunately, I have not looked over where everyone's from, but I bet some people are across the Atlantic now, or maybe the Pacific even. So it's pretty amazing that we're living in this kind of world that you can still communicate. I have friends in Australia and Japan, and it's always a challenge. Like, how many hours ahead are they? 12 hours, 14 hours. So, but it's amazing we can connect. But in those days, it was really difficult, and there was a lot of confusion. And what happened? Did they get married when they own overseas? You think about in the, when people came over from Europe and the husband came and the rest of the family was behind or something. So this is really very, very relevant. Okay, ADA. Again, we're talking to Rachel before about love these primitive laws that then the rabbis have to struggle with them to develop them into a moral, ethical religion. But we have on ADA that malkin al chazakot, you can give someone lashes for violating something when it is a presumption. A chazaka is a presumption. You presume something, very complicated halachic term, but basically is a presumption. And sokling the sorfim ala chazakot. Sometimes, I don't know how exactly this works, and it's only theoretical, but you can execute a person, stone them, and burn them. One of the executions was involved pouring molten lead into their throats. Really nice stuff. Based on chazakot, based on a chazak in a certain circumstance, based on a certain presumption. If you don't have not absolute proof, and again, we won't go into it because the Gemara doesn't really go into it here. But then I love this. Okay, you can sometimes, when there's a good presumption, send them off, kill them, execute them. But the ain sorfim truma ala chazakot. But when it comes to the idea of burning tithes, truma are very holy. The tithes that are supposed to go to the Kohen, the little bit that you take out from your wheat or from your produce and give to the priest, very strict and very holy. And sometimes you might have a presumption that these are tameh. This truma that you took out for the priest became impure. And if it's really impure, you have to burn it. and but only if you have real proof, not a presumption, not a chazaka. So you can put someone to death based on a chazaka sometimes, but you can't burn truma. I think clearly the Gemara knows that there's something that they have to do with it. There's something funny about this, but this is like the material that our rabbis work with over the centuries and over the millennia to come out with a beautiful ethical Judaism. 80B. Okay, we have 4 more minutes. Yichud, the whole being alone with a woman. There's you have 3 women, you have to have 2 men. And this comes up even crazy with the laws of adoption. There are some mainly in the ultra-Orthodox world that will not practice adoption because they're afraid that if you adopt a kid and a boy, and the kid grows up and the adopted mother is alone with the kid, then that could be yichud. Oh, you know, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik and Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik all said, no, this yichud is you gotta know what it, it's with a stranger. It's not with your kid, someone that you regard as your kid. There's no problem being alone with them. Now, you might say, oh, come on, you primitive rabbis, yichud being alone. But, we know that that's a big issue these days. And therefore, I hope you have offices. And if you're one-on-one, the truth is one-on-one men and men, women and whatever, you should have a window in your office or something like that. You should not be alone. American Jewish Committee, we do a lot with high school programs. Whenever you're with someone else, you need 2 adults in any room. When you're calling a high schooler, you need to have another adult on that line. Just so they're very strict about yichud, American Jewish Committee. And the Boy Scouts should have been stricter, and Catholic Church and Jewish institutions. We invented yichud, not being alone, and making sure that no funny business occurs when people are alone together. And yet we have an issue in Judaism, in the Orthodox world. Okay, anyway, not clear whether yichud is from Deoraita, from the Torah or not. On 81A, pay Aleph Amud Aleph, it's like, well, if you go on a trip, you need 2 extra people because one of them might go pishy. And if they're going pishy in the forest, then you're going to be alone. So you need 3 people or whatever. So very pragmatic. By the time we get to today's daf, it's lots of stories about Yetzer Hara, about the evil inclination. And Rabbi Akiva was people who have evil inclinations, they're so silly. No, it hits even as we know, the most pious of people. And the idea is really to be strict about it. On 82B, well, that's tomorrow. And interesting idea of, again, teachers not being alone with their students and, oh, come on, you're so old-fashioned. No, again, this stuff is very relevant. How do we have a society that protects the most vulnerable? And that's really what Kiddushin is trying to do. Again, it's a way of using these building blocks that if we just leave them as building blocks, we're going to have a terrible home. But if we take them and we work with them, we build a beautiful ethical home and palace. Okay, Rachel, I think we're caught up.
Okay, thank you so much. Lots going on in the last few pages. Last page is interesting too. And we are right at the hour. So please hold your questions and bring them to the Siyum tomorrow so that we can address them there, hopefully. And also Rabbi Lopatin will be there, also Rabbi Elliot Goldberg and Rabbanit Dasi Fruchter. So we will have a whole panel available to continue the discussion of this tractate. And we will look forward to seeing you there and celebrating, and then on to Bava Kama.
Bava Kama.
All right. Hopefully see lots of you tomorrow in 26 hours time, whatever that
Can't
is.
Wait.
2 hours forward from this hour, whatever this hour is for you. Okay, look for the sign up in your email. Okay.
Get a lot of sleep,
and an early Shabbat Shalom. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rachel.